Bradford has been named the most entrepreneurial city in the UK, mostly driven by its young population and a strong network it's built over the years. According to stats, Bradford has the highest registrations of new businesses. And Bradford also enjoys, unlike other cities, it's got the highest business confidence, which is helping the community develop further with and experience economic growth for long term. You're listening to the Unwritten Journal podcast. I'm your host, Sajid Rasool. And today we have a young man from Bradford, Jay Khan, who has been involved in setting up a business at a very young age, and it's extremely inspiring. Jav, welcome to the episode today. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. It's a pleasure to be on the show. I've been waiting here to do it for a while now, and yeah, there's lots to discuss. I'm a festival and a trade show organizer, and yeah, I've got about 6 years worth of experience doing it, and started from the bottom, very nitty gritty. I lost a lot of money in the day, got a lot of stories to tell, and yeah, let's dive into it.
Fantastic. Yeah, has it been 6 years you've been doing this? Is that when? Yeah,
Yeah,
seems
first
a
one,
long
six
time.
years.
It's
Yeah,
yeah,
awfully
yeah,
long ago. It's
amazing.
from a
Yeah.
small
What
cedar
got you
cot.
into this? What got you into this idea of the events? How did that concept come about?
Ooh, so about actually 7 years ago, I was 18. I was trying to understand what business to go for, and I found myself in a lot of networking environments. And within that, what I saw is I was constantly speaking to people and trying to, create a network of people when I didn't really have a product. Hoping one day I'm going to understand what other people's products are, understand the local environment, and when I do have that product, we can go and pitch it. But the penny dropped when I was actually in another networking event, and I thought, well, hold on a minute. Why, since I'm speaking to these people, and I've got all these contacts, why not just start our own trade show? Because naturally, I'm already in that sort of business and in these environments. So yeah, we started the first trade show in Bradford. You were actually the first exhibitor, and
Yes, is that the one? Is that the first one then?
yeah,
Was
in
that the
Cedar
first one you
Court,
did? Fantastic.
hit the
Yeah, that
ground
was
running.
amazing.
Ground running. It was fiscally that show. It didn't make £1 million, but it proved the business concept. It
Okay.
was a room full of exhibitors. We managed to get bigger companies in and sort of local efforts in too. But it really proved the concept that, you can open an event and the revenue can sort of come to you. And yeah, we did that. That event was a success. It was
Mm.
actually only a half-day event, quite interestingly. But again, it was all just about the concept. It wasn't really about making $1 million. But yeah, for us, it worked. It worked perfectly, and then we sort
Mhm.
of just scaled it from there, really.
Yeah, fantastic. But then you moved away from the business side of stuff, didn't you? From corporate events to
Yeah. So, funnily enough, we moved away from trade shows purely because we found in and around that time, sort of post-COVID, it was quite tricky to get people to come out to events. A lot of it was digital. And even today, as we're still doing trade shows, we're sort of finding that the world becoming so digital is still somewhat of a problem in acquiring new customers. But we looked at the spectrum and obviously, doing research and just seeing what events were out there. We obviously came across festivals and fan conventions. And me being a big nerd myself, naturally what we saw is people want to go out to these conventions for their favorite fandoms, i.e., Star Wars, Doctor Who, Japanese animation. They want to have a good day out. They want to see, screen used memorabilia, buy merchandise, meet their favorite guests. So we really found a niche within that. It's something that's already it begun in America about 60 to 70 years ago, and it's quite new to the UK. But it's definitely something that we sort of captured, and because we were all such big nerds, we thought it's ideal for us. It's almost you doing your dream job, and
yeah.
yeah, it's that's the angle we're going at the moment. But like I said, we're also into trade shows, so that's not something we've sort of dropped the ball on.
Okay, cool. Sounds amazing. Yeah. And then obviously you must have found a lot of challenges. What kind of challenges did you find? Obviously you mentioned post-COVID with getting people to attending the trade events. But generally speaking, when you're setting these fan-based events, what kind of challenges do you face?
Well, I mean, both sides of it, so the trade shows and the convention side of the business, it's all to do with risk essentially, because, prior to setting a trade show up, you're looking at hiring a venue, getting suppliers in to set up the infrastructure for the event. So most times you can be looking at, a five-figure plus bill before you even started the event. So it can be quite daunting. Naturally, over the years, we've gone from small hotels to sort of sports centres all the way to arenas. So we've managed to get there. However, obviously each project comes with its own risks, particularly fiscally, because you just, I always say this is a type of business that forecasting isn't something that really exists too accurately because you don't know who's going to be there on the day. You don't know the vicinity of the debut show. So they are quite hard. It's quite hard to gauge stuff. And the opposite side of that coin, it can be quite daunting, especially when you're running a show and you're putting thousands of hours into planning an event, and you never know the fiscal outcome. Perhaps you do all that effort and you come and lose money by the end of it. So yeah, it is really, quite a risk-heavy business. But I think that's what makes it so interesting as well, because you're going to meet so many new people on the way, sponsors, and just generally see how these shows perform.
Mhm. Yeah, because these fan base can be obviously they're based on trend, geography. There's a lot of factors that can affect whether it makes or breaks the event as well. So I suppose it's high risk in that respect. But yeah, so obviously speaking from your experience, obviously you've gone from a job, a young man in a job, 9 to 5 job, and then you've gone straight into this business. How was that transition like then?
So yeah, from early, I never took the traditional route of like sixth form and A levels and a degree. I was more wanting to get into the working environment, so I actually did an apprenticeship. And following that, I've always sort of had delusions of grandeur. And I always had a plan, my whole goal was working the 9 to 5 was just to collect capital. And, I always had a bigger plan for it. So even while, I was in the earlier days, I was working 70 odd hours a week in call centers just to purely collect capital. So, once I do take the big business risk, we can dare to do it. I never sort of aimlessly just worked to get by. There was always a bigger plan, really. And once we found trade shows, it sort of all made sense because, they require a lot of revenue, sorry, a lot of capital to begin. And yeah, we just thought, it's the perfect risk to really make since we had so many connections. But I didn't really rush it. It wasn't something like, by the time I'm X years old, I need to be making this much money and doing this business. It all just sort of fell in my lap. So, and I think because I'm in Yorkshire, there's an awful lot of networking events, free networking events in Yorkshire. So meeting that many people, it was a big crutch really to make it work. And at the same time, I was also investing in groups like the Chamber of Commerce, BNI, Federation of Small Business. So there was a lot of effort pre-incorporation, just building that network up to one day, have the product to put in front of them. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a lot of strategy, but then also there was bits and pieces just falling by chance in my lap.
Yeah. So networking obviously is very crucial, isn't it? And we met in a networking event as well, didn't we? This is where our connection started. Yeah. I remember in Bradford. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, networking, some people find them quite, they are time consuming, and sometimes can be like, you might feel, oh my God, I'm going to take time out of my day and go and attend this networking event. It might not be fruitful, it might do, but overall, it just proves it's very important. Networking and connecting with people is very important, as you've just shown, has proved it as well. Um, so yeah, so obviously that's been amazing, and obviously then the lifestyle change, isn't it? When once you're in a 9 to 5 job, you've got the cushion of having that certainty as well, where your paychecks are dropping into your bank as well. But when you're self-employed, you lose all that as well because then it's onto you, isn't it? If you don't put any work in, you don't get paid. So how did you absorb that then?
That was the most daunting thing, going from, payee payroll to
Mhm.
all of a sudden now we need employers' liability insurance to pay myself. So that was the most daunting bit. But I always understood that the nature of the universe is if we don't take the risks, if you follow, and this might sound a bit cocky and a bit cockish, but I believe if you keep in the 9 to 5 without any further strategy, the end goal is quite binary. You're not really going to progress and unlock your potential. So for me, knowing that it was a risk I sort of had to make, just because obviously, again, in this business, it's not something you can really do part time. You do have to commit to it. I think in the early days, even pre-incorporation, we were making 200 odd phone calls a day, just connecting to
Yeah.
people. And even at that point, there was no product. It was just, this is who I am. This is what we're intending. How would you like to interact with it? Would this be of any business value to you, etc., etc. So yeah, that was the sort of thing that made it a bit more comfortable for me is pre-incorporation. There was already that quite big network, which didn't really cost me anything to build except for my own time. But at that point, I was so, you know, business, I want the big business. I want to be an entrepreneur. That I wasn't really valuing my time, which was
Yeah.
fine because naturally we were making the connections. But it's interesting the point you mentioned on networking because I believe on the in the first trade show, we had around about 40 exhibitors. However, to obtain those 40 connections, I'm pretty sure I spoke to over 1,000 people across about 6 months of 6 months of networking, both over the phone, digitally via socials, and in-person events. But I always understood the law of averages. Not every single person you speak to is going to be interested, and it just sort of
Yeah.
snowballed from there.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. That's amazing. Yeah, because you got to have that persistency and keep approaching, keep doing what you have to do and not give up because you get a knockback. I mean, obviously, if you're approaching 1,000 to get 40, that's you've encountered a lot of knockbacks there. And they say success in sales jobs, in business generation, like lead generation, new business generation, you have to collect so many no's in order to get that yes. So it's like you said, law of averages. It's absolutely amazing. That's a really good mindset to have because a lot of people, when they set up, as soon as they hear a couple of no's, they think nobody wants it. I've heard that so many people, so many times. We might target an area. We might say, let's go to Leeds. We're in Leeds. There's about 3 people gone into Leeds, and they'll say, oh, they've encountered a number of no's, and they might say, oh, nobody in Leeds wants it. But think, well, I'm sure you're not spoke to everybody in Leeds because there's a million people there. So yeah, having that right mindset is important. And your experience like in Bradford, I know they talk about Bradford being the entrepreneurial city. What's your experience in Bradford then? Obviously, you get a lot of support from the community there as well.
So with Bradford specifically, our customer base for the events we've done in Bradford, particularly the trade shows, it was more sort of because in networking, we were connecting with more sort of bigger conglomerates, like for example the FSB, which is like a national outfit.
Yeah,
So a lot of the connections we made locally networking were sort of more national firms, particularly small business in Bradford. We did have of that 40 on the initial show, I think we had about 10. I'll stop trying to reference that initial show. I just remember it so vividly.
yeah,
So yeah, it was good. Over the years on the fan convention side, even though Bradford is the youngest city in Britain, um, we've we have had some events fail. Not necessarily due to the local environment. It may be more so to the venues. Bradford particularly doesn't have like mega arenas and these type of things. But yeah, from a trade show perspective, um, uh, we never found Bradford to be a key hub. However, I think it is developing. Plus, the product we will build, bringing it more sort of suits national outfits.
hmm It also got the City of Culture as well, Bradford. A couple of years ago, was it? It got awarded the City of Culture for UK as well, isn't it? Did you see an impact on that?
Yeah, but by that point, we were more sort of big city focus, Leeds, Manchester, London. So we never dabbled
Yeah.
in that or made connections with them, albeit we did propose a few things to them, particularly
Mhm.
to do with the Bradford Life, which are still in negotiations. However, generally speaking, I've never been one to sort of bank on councils for support. I think I feel that strategy is sort of secondary. We've always taken the approach that, we're going to make things work ourselves, and if they want to get on board, perfect. If not, the show still must go on.
Yeah, I like that. The show must go on. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, yeah. Also, so obviously, then you obviously packed your job in. So did you do that gradually, or just like packed it in to decided one day, "Look, I'm not doing nine to five now. I'm now going to start my business." Or did you do it gradually to say, "Look, this"? I know you tested the waters with the trade show, and then you got the confidence, said, "This is working. Let's go and do other. Let's do more events."
Yeah, so for me, the issue is with the events industry, you sort of have to wear a lot of hats. So in the early days, prior to having staff and outsourced suppliers, I was the web designer. I was also the event planner, sorting the infrastructure out, coordinating guests to the show. So I purely couldn't do this part time just because I was wearing so many different hats. And if you think the average 9 to 5 worker in this business would be working 8 hours a day, that's it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say at some points we were working 20 odd hours a day.
Mm,
But I suppose, if you're going for that sort of bootstrapped approach, in the early days, it is a case prior to seeing the revenue and getting the economy to scale, you are going to have to sort of make a lot of, you're going to need to be the biggest resource yourself and sort of the biggest workhorse. For me, it was fine because, I always, I had a handful of skills digitally which could make it work quite easily. And plus, this is quite a digital business. A lot of the interactions and transactions are purely via email, social media leads, and these type of things. So yeah, it was more sort of me being forced to take the risk on the time really and dedicate more hours to the business. But I did try my very best to keep an income while I could, but it just reached a point where it was just too many hats really. And even
mm,
today, even with the economy at scale, it's still a similar operation when I'm involved in everything from planning the infrastructure, global negotiations with guests to the event, health and safety planning, risk assessments, floor plans, and then also overseeing the technical aspects of the business, like the cyber security, and the sort of web development.
yeah. Yeah, amazing. You have to have that passion and that commitment to do this, isn't it? Otherwise, it's not for light-hearted people because, like, you not see you're not going to see the light through the tunnel for a long time. So you've got to
No.
commit yourself and have that confidence that eventually it's gonna work, basically. So fantastic and well done for doing that. It's amazing. You're truly inspiring to the younger generation. Um, what plans do you have then for your business to move forward? What's your future plans then?
So right now it's more sort of establishing more positions of existing trade shows and conventions, not only nationally, but into the sort of short parts of Europe where infrastructure can get shipped across
Oh
quite
wow.
easily.
Yeah.
So, now we've done the British circuit. We've dibbled and dabbled in like the Scottish and the Welsh circuit. However, obviously for our business to work best, it sort of depends on population. So now we're looking at getting into Paris, Berlin, and sort of these more sort of populated areas in Europe. Because this business, it's more sort of it's not really the position in the event itself. It's more sort of the concept, which if it works in one position, people in that position have similar interests globally. So
Mm.
the chap in London who likes a certain event, we can almost guarantee there'll be individuals in Paris just because of the human nature and people being interested in similar things. There should also be ticket buyers or stakeholders, exhibitors
Yeah.
of the replicated event there. So that's the business vision moving forward. That is probably the most polarizing part of any of this journey is getting it into Europe. However, with that, it's something like we said initially starting was a risk. This is like a whole separate business now because, now you're dealing with a completely different law set, a new incorporation. So it's almost like starting the business up again.
Yeah.
But yeah, something which that's the natural progression of these businesses really because, while we're sort of quite active in dominating the national circuit, the natural progression to move it further forward is to go global with it. And we've seen it over the years, many conventions, many British trade shows. For example, the business show at Excel, it's also got arms in, America and different parts of the world. So that's the approach we're really trying to take at the moment. And I see that being a big possibility in the next 2 years to move it into there.
Fantastic. Yeah. Sounds amazing. Um, Absolutely fantastic. And Joe, what would you think about like to keep yourself motivated? Obviously, you talk about all these long hours you work and all that. You wear so many hats as well. What do you do to keep yourself motivated and to stay focused?
Well, the biggest motivation for me is understanding that if the ball slips and a certain event gets cancelled because of it or postponed because of it, we could be facing losses of immense amounts of money. So it's not really a motivation that keeps us going. It's more so the fear of having a negative, having a negative experience with a particular event. Because obviously people look at the business and see thousands of tickets selling. However, if those thousands of tickets don't sell, we're stacked up against costs which, only can break even if thousands of tickets do sell. So the biggest motivation is the fiscal pressure of an event going catastrophically. I've never really believed in motivation. It's more so a discipline that we sort of try and, you know, work from. But yeah, the fear is the biggest motivating factor, if you will, in this business.
Yeah, that's interesting. That yeah, and I like the fact that you said discipline is important, isn't it? To have that discipline and be consistent with your approach is important to success. And obviously with it being a risky business, I can understand with the fear side of obviously you're laying out that lot of money up front, and you've got to actually not only break even but make a profit as well. So it is is a bit of a challenge there as well. Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely fantastic to speak to you. Do you have any message you want to give to somebody who's starting a business up? Maybe young like yourself or anyone who's thinking of setting up.
I think the biggest thing I could say is the commitment.
Mm.
Somebody told me once the reason Silicon Valley is so successful is because they can begin and fail and begin and fail and do it 30 or 40 times before they reach that sort of concept which is scalable. So it's definitely, keeping discipline and consistency, even if you come across a massive financial downfall in a certain venture. And everyone has great ideas, but I think the people who really make it are the ones who just don't quit after, you know, a venture fails, really.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Joe. Thanks. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show today.